Knowledge is a person who only loves a warrior. You have to go and get it. You don't just end up wise just by living. You end up, so oftentimes jaded and frustrated and oftentimes confused. But you don't end up wise just by living. Unless you find a meaning and a purpose in what you're doing, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. You could be the CEO of Twitter, or you could be the CEO of General Electric, or you could be the CEO of, name the company, of Bud Light. And she was talking about the product because they're in a controversy right now. And I was thinking, like, my God, could you imagine that? Like being the CEO of a beer company. Like, what do you bring to the world? Domestic violence, drunk driving, anger, child abuse. That's what you bring into the world. And you talk about, like, we are branding this product. I'm like, shut up, dude. You're making violence juice. But she applied for the job, man. And there are lots of people who probably, if they saw the paycheck, would be like, I'll do it. Yeah. And I always remember that back in the concentration camps, they always found some Jews who were willing to be guards too. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I'm not saying it's not either. It's a word association, so that kind of like the Rorschach test. If I ask you what's on that page, what's the ink that's there, there's no actual shape that's there. Whatever you see there is kind of coming completely from your mind. It tells me more about what's inside of you than what's actually on the page. The same is true if we do like a word association with work. If I ask you what comes to your mind when you hear this, oftentimes like the paycheck is the first thing. I think that someone did say money at the very beginning. But then after that, we think of like office job, construction. In other words, these are the kinds of jobs. So we start thinking about the types of jobs. And then consistency, which is interesting. Stress and stress relief, boring, disciplined, hard. That tells us a lot, not so much about what work is, but how it is that we view work. And you're going to find that the way that we view work is going to have a lot to do with how we work and also the kinds of jobs that we take. So for example, I was talking to a friend of mine just yesterday, and he works in construction. Over by J Street, excuse me, I guess they're building this big old complex with like an amphitheater and all that. So a friend of mine is working on the construction job for that. And I saw him yesterday. He was walking around, he's wearing his yellow vest still, which is interesting because he has a hoodie on, but he's still wearing the yellow vest from his construction job. And I asked him how things were going. How's life? Oh, man. And this guy went on for a long time talking about how he got this job and what they're doing. And they had them doing these stretches in the morning, and they listened to Metallica, and he has to walk all this distance, and he's trying to lose a bunch of weight. And he just goes on a long time about it. And then at the end of it, I kind of asked him, all right, so you're enjoying it? He says, well, it sucks. It's work, so I hate working. But and the thing is, he really meant that. The way he said it, he's like, I hate working. And he just means that, like, generally. It doesn't almost matter what kind of a job you give him. He just hates working. And so it'd be interesting to ask him to do a word association to see what he would make of work. But also this will have a lot to do with our experience with it as well. Like, I wonder how many of you guys know people who really love their job. They really love the work that they do. I know you know at least one person who loves the work that they do and they love their job. They look forward to waking up every day and doing it. But how many people in your life do? And that might influence how it is that you think of work. And we have this really dysfunctional relationship with work, where we think of work as being kind of these things that are outside of ourselves. And so when Marcuse is saying that we devote our lives to earning a living, we're incapable of living a human existence, it kind of goes like along with that perception that work just sucks, period. And I asked that question at the beginning, why is it that we might be encouraged to work by society and culture? And it's worth thinking about. Like, why is it that a culture would want us so much to... Why is it that we'd have a culture that so much kind of gears us towards working? And there's a reason for it. There can be some very positive things that come from work. It's like, yes, a paycheck. And we can sigh and go, oh, it's just for money. That's interesting, because you'll find that people will say stuff like that, and yet those are the people who really, really want to get the new iPhone. Or they really, really want to get a new car. Or they really, really want to have a new television. And then we'll complain about how much we have to work just to survive. We're not just surviving anymore, guys. We're way past that. We're way past that. In fact, we're we're so far past survival that we're in danger of not surviving. Meaning that we're so far past that primal need to go out and hunt and to grow food, and we're so advanced that all it takes is one big rock from the sky to reset everything, to take away everything that we're so advanced in. You follow what I'm saying? Like if one meteor hits the Earth and messes up just our electrical grids, or we get like one solar flare from the sun that's a little bit too much, it fries all of our electronics. Any of you guys know how to hunt? Okay, so you're going to starve. Well, monkey, anybody know how to grow a vegetable? Yeah, if not, we got trouble, man. In other words, we're so far past just survival that we're in danger of not surviving if something like that were to happen. And so, what that tells us is that the kinds of work that we're engaged in are pretty advanced. They're not just to survive, but they're to keep a society going and to keep a society advancing. We're not just stagnant. And so what I'm saying is that we have this kind of really dysfunctional relationship with work where we recognize that it produces some really cool things and some things that we really, really like a lot. And yet we say how much we hate doing it. Then, like, do you think that the iPhone was produced by people who hate their work? Do you think they went in every day and were like, this sucks, man, engineering sucks? Do you think so? I'm asking. Probably not. Probably not. These are probably people who went into work and were trying to solve a problem, or they were trying to design something or build something, and then every 2 weeks they were like, oh, that's right, and I get paid for this. I forgot about that part. In other words, they're doing something, they're engaged in an activity they really, really like doing, and they see that it's very beneficial. Going back to something that AJ was saying, they see a purpose in it. They see a meaning in it. And if you don't see a purpose and a meaning in your job, of course you drag yourself to work every day, and it's boring, it's hard, and especially these two things go hand in hand, boring and difficult. Because if it's boring, it's going to be difficult. Just look at your classes. You know, if you're bored by your classes, it isn't that the classes are bad. Maybe it's that your attention isn't there. And if your attention's not there, because you're distracted, well, of course it's going to be boring when the very few times that you are pulled back into it. Because you're not going to understand what's going on. Excuse me. And if you understand what's going on, of course it's difficult. And then because it's difficult, you hate doing it. And because you're so far behind, and then it's this tragic circle. And then what ends up happening? Do you think that you get to kind of coast through all this, learn very little, develop bad habits, develop the skill set of quitting when things are difficult, and then, lo and behold, you get to design the next iPhone and get that exciting job? Of course not. Of course not. If you don't do the work that's necessary early on, and you don't get the job that you want, you get the job that you have. You don't even get the job you need. You get the job you have to take. And that's what ends up happening so often. I wonder how many of you are surrounded by people who have jobs that they have to take. Not jobs they want to take, not the jobs that they need, but the jobs that were available to them. And I wonder if if we complain about how hard it is and how terrible it is and how much, how stressful it is, I wonder if you went back and you were to ask him, when you were in school, what was your day like? Can you tell me about school? Like how much you learned? Man, school was bullshit. Uh-huh. How's your job today? Are you doing something that you want or something that you need? And by the way, there are people who work construction. They friggin' love it, man. They friggin' love it. The guy I was talking about just now who hates working, just generally hates working, his brother is the one who I told you about earlier, who is a foreman now. Late 20s, and he's a foreman. Never graduated from, got kicked out of this very school. And now he's a foreman. Because he put in all the extra work to go in early, stay late. All the other employees all the other construction workers were laughing at him, making fun of him. Dude, you're a kiss ass. You come, you're stupid. You work extra, you don't get paid for it. You're stupid. You know? And what's he do now? He's their boss. And he makes way more than them. And he doesn't have to put as much toll on his body. Those other guys, construction workers, those are the ones who are complaining. Two brothers, same family, same everything. Very different ends to it, though. One is doing construction because he wants to. Other one's doing it because if he doesn't, his girlfriend's going to kick him out of the house. That's a true story, by the way. I'm glad he hates school so much, because then he'll never see this video. But this is the point. It's like you can take the job that you want at some point. And if you want to work construction, then that's how you end up every 2 weeks going, oh, that's right, and I get paid for this. Versus, you know, oh, man, dragging yourself home, hating it all, and then kind of like medicating ourselves by buying the new iPhone and being like, well, at least I get paid for it. At least that. If you can find a meaning, though, and find a purpose in it, it's bigger than just that. Even the paycheck is fine. What is it that you're doing it for? The paycheck. I have to do it. Well, you don't have to work for money if you don't spend money. The only reason you need a bunch of this is because you want to have a new phone, and you want to have a new car, and you want to have a more expensive place to live. You know, money only matters to people who have bills. You can get by on very little if you want very little. That's the problem. We want more than we're willing to work for. We want to have knowledge, but we forget that knowledge is a person who only loves a warrior. You have to go and get it. You don't just end up wise just by living. You end up, so oftentimes jaded and frustrated and oftentimes confused, but you don't end up wise just by living. That takes something. That takes effort. And so, unless you find a meaning and a purpose in what you're doing, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It's going to be meaningless. You could be the CEO of Twitter, or you could be the CEO of General Electric, or you could be the CEO of, name the company. And if you don't see the value in it, I got thinking, I did an interview recently with somebody who's the CEO of Bud Light. And she was talking about the product because they're in a controversy right now. And I was thinking, my God, could you imagine that? Being the CEO of a beer company. What do you bring to the world? Domestic violence, drunk driving, anger, child abuse. That's what you bring into the world. And you talk about it we are branding this product. I'm like, shut up, dude. You're making violence juice. But she applied for the job, man. And there are lots of people who probably, if they saw the paycheck, would be like, I'll do it. I'll do it. Yeah. And I always remember that back in the concentration camps, they always found some Jews who were willing to be guards, too. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I'm not saying it's not either. But you can draw your own conclusions. And I've seen people before who were security guards working for minimum wage at the mall in Mission Valley, talking to the guy. And I'm asking him about his job, and he's like, that's pretty good. He said, it's pretty good. They give me a jacket. He's wearing a security guard jacket. And for him, it's like, they gave me a warm jacket. This is a good deal. I walk around all day. I get some exercise. I get to talk to people. The guy loves it. The guy has a meaning. He has a purpose that gets him going there every day. And a lot of people would be like, I'd rather be the person who's the CEO of Anheuser-Busch. Well, maybe, if money is the thing that you're after. But if meaning and purpose is the thing that you're after, then I guess you'd probably take another job. And maybe that's that question about what it is to live a human existence. Of course, that's going to be different for all of us. Well, I guess the meaning and purpose, the desire for meaning and purpose will be universal to all of us. But what it is to get meaning and purpose out of it is going to be different. My friend who loves construction, he's able to every day look at the job site and then walk away from it. And then come back the next day and kind of see in the morning what it looks like, and then in the afternoon leave and be able to look at what it looks like now. So over time, he can see these things being built. So he can see the direct result of the stuff that he's contributing to. And then in a year or two, he can drive past the building and say, I helped build that. That's what he loves. He's able to see these things around San Diego that he's helping build. My other friend who's walking there, and he doesn't see any of that because his head is down. If you understand what I'm saying, the metaphoric, but he doesn't ever get to see the stuff that he produces. As teachers, sometimes we get to see the buildings that we produce. Sometimes we don't. But if you find a meaning in it and a purpose in it, you're going to love it. Excuse me. You guys have teachers who look like they absolutely hate their jobs? Those teachers, keep in mind, most of them earn close to six figures, $100,000 a year. And they have more days off than they have days on. We work 184 days out of the year. We have more days off than days on. we have medical care, we have health insurance, we have everything you could possibly want out of a job. We're not even responsible for our results. If every single one of my students ever fails, there's nothing they can do about it. All they can say is, they can ask me why, and all I have to say is, they're not working. But they can't fire me for it. They can't even ask me to change anything for it. We're the most protected group of people, and yet they're still miserable. Do you really think it's about the money? Do you think that we go home every day like, oh man, working that jackhammer today really messed up my body? No. Well, most of us just end up overweight sitting at a desk, and yet still complaining about the job. Why? They don't see a meaning in it, a lot of people. They don't see a purpose in it. Over the years, they try to make a difference. It doesn't happen when they don't see it happening anyway. Get jaded and lose meaning and purpose. So maybe it's not so much about the job. Maybe it's about our relationship to work. How do you view it? Do you view it as something that is terrible, horrible, hate doing it, you have to wake up and we drag our asses to it, we don't see any meaning in it, we don't see any purpose in it? I can see why people would hate their jobs if they did that. I see it all the time. You can see it in people's faces when they're working. And yet, other people get up and do the worst stuff what we would think of as the worst stuff in the world and love it. So maybe it has to do with our relationship to work and what we think about it, how we conceive it. And that means that the power to love your life or to hate your life is entirely within your power. To find meaning, to find purpose. If you find meaning in it, you're going to love it. If you're not able to, you can hate it. It takes work, though. It's not always obvious. It's not always obvious. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms?